Welcome back. In this lesson, we are going to be adding some details to our accessories here. And I notice I haven't renamed my hat here, so we'll just double click on this cube, call it hat. And if you already did that, well done, good job. I like where you're headed. You're learning, you're doing great. So now let's do some sculpting. So I'll click on the nose layer and go into object mode and switch to sculpting mode. And let's use the draw sharp. It's kind of going to do the opposite of draw, but more of like a downward crease. I'll show you here. So let's just scale, just zoom in, and notice anytime you orbit or pan around, there's some kind of, the nose kind of goes into like a low poly look, and that's just to make it a little lighter and quicker for when you're moving your view around. So it's nothing wrong with Blender or your computer. It's just trying to make the performance faster. So I'm going to scale this down pretty small and zoom into this carrot nose here. And what we're going to do is just make little lines on the nose. So just doing like little carrot lines. And maybe increase the strength. Maybe like you can just click in there 0.75. And if you can't see this tools thing right here, you can do view and tool settings. You know, if it's gone, you can do view, tool settings, and that'll bring it back. Or you can do it over here. So personal preference. And so we've got increased strength. And we're just going to make some lines. And I'm just going to kind of freestyle this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be very, 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 very tiny when we go to actually 3D print this. But just make some texture lines. It's going to make it look more like a carrot. And, maybe move review, get closer to the front there. And it's already done it on the other side because we have the mirror turned on. Maybe we'll do some on the bottom. Just kind of random small strokes, big strokes. Just to kind of make it more like a carrot. Whoops. And you can always hit Control Z if you mess up. I'm going to zoom in here and get pretty detailed on the nose. And that looks pretty good. Maybe do some on the top. And again, it's just kind of random, just to kind of give it some life, some texture. It's all about the details. That's what separates the pros from the amateurs. The details. So, just add some details. Maybe not that kind, but, just little details. Be anything. It'll be almost that tiny. It's going to be very, very microscopic, but it will definitely come across. So I'm happy with that. Once you're done with your nose texture, we can just flip over to object mode. Now let's do some bark on the arms. So just click on the arms and we'll go to sculpt mode. Make sure you saved if you haven't saved in a while. And for this one, let's use clay strips. And we'll just kind of do a little technique that I do just to make it look like bark. There is a way to actually add texture brushes, but that gets a little bit more complicated than what we're going to do for the basics. So just use clay strips and just kind of make some lines. And notice I'm getting like the weird mirroring thing going on where it's like there's like a blue dot. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a blue dot or a little dot kind of right below my mouse there. And that is because the X is turned on. And the reason that's happening, and the reason one that the other arm isn't appearing, is because we're in sculpt mode and we have that mirror modifier on. So if we go back, it'll pop on. If we go to sculpt, it'll disappear. And that's not a bug. That's just Blender, kind of doesn't show all the modifiers when you're in sculpt mode sometimes. So just stay in sculpt mode. I'm going to undo these clay strokes. So just Control Z until all these little strokes disappear. And we'll go into, make sure you're still in sculpt mode. And let's turn off the X symmetry for the clay strips. That just because we have the mirror modifier. So, if we add some clay strips onto the arm, when we go back to object mode, it will still appear, on the other one for us. So we still don't have to do it twice, but for the bark, let's just turn the X off. And now we're just going to go to town. Just, keep moving your view. Maybe make my brush a little bit bigger with F, and just make long and short strokes on the arm here. And it's going to start to just look like bark. It's kind of just a trick that I made up. But, you can get as creative as you want, or try any other brushes if you're not, if this isn't satisfactory to you. But, I think it looks pretty cool. It's just going to give it kind of like a stick texture. Super easy. And it's just a good practice. If you've never done sculpting before, it can be pretty fun. Just kind of put on some good music and just kind of get lost in the sculpt. And it can get really fun. And that's one of the reasons I really enjoy Blender, is because you can do, very detailed, like precision product design, and then flip over and just do some like sculpting details on it. So essentially we're doing kind of like box modeling with a sculpting workflow on top. And so I'm just going to go all the way up and down this arm here. And again, if you ever mess up, just Control Z. Don't be bashful. And again, this is going to be very, 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 very small, but it is going to just give some texture and some details to our arms here. And I'm kind of just following the flow of the wood here. So, it's kind of Ying out right there. So we'll just kind of go in both directions, just kind of overlap it. Go to the other side, do the same thing. I'm not very, very intentional with this, just kind of doing it very quick and random to kind of make it feel like nature. Nature is it's not very perfect. It's just kind of, patterns are all over the place in nature. So we're just kind of mimicking that look. And if you enjoy sculpting, let me know in the discussions up in the top right, because I would love to make a sculpting for 3D print design. But just let me know if y'all are interested in that, and I'll get on it, because I think that would be really cool. And that looks pretty good. That's a little too, something's looking off to me there. So I'm just going to kind of make some random strokes right there. Maybe bring it down. There we go. Yeah, all right, so I'm happy with that. Feel free to take your time and get it to look how you want. And whenever you are done, just swap back over to object mode, and bada bing, bada boom. Your stick textures will be on that side as well. Go ahead and save. And now let's click on the hat and add some details to this. It's a little too clean for my liking. It's a little just too perfect. So let's go into sculpt mode. And I'm going to use the draw tool. But I'm actually going to use the inverse of that. So I'm going to hold Control on my keyboard while I make these strokes. So let's make our brush pretty big. And I'm just going to do Control and kind of just give the hat some kind of like, some deformations. And notice we still have our X turned off because I don't want it to be perfectly symmetrical for the hat. I just want maybe it looks like he's worn it for many a years, or whoever gave him the hat, maybe this hat has seen some days. So we're just going to kind of mess it up a little bit. That's what sculpting's for. Just trying to give it some character. So he's kind of, just kind of holding Control and just making some wiggly squigglies on the hat and on the rim. Just to give it some life. That's better. And let's go ahead and jump into our Eevee mode. If you've got your lights set on, yes, that's looking great. So already it's got so much life. This little snowman is super funny looking and adorable. I'm pretty happy with that. Again, take your time. And once you're ready, we're going to go into the next lesson where we are going to prep this for 3D printing.